Hi, thank you for joining me today. My topic is, of course, we should be thankful. Of course, we should be thankful, but it's not always so easy. I think about the children of Israel, and they wandered through the wilderness for 40 years, and every day they ate the same thing. Now, how many of us would like to be in that situation? I mean, sometimes it's hard for us to eat the same thing for maybe 2 or 3 days. We don't want those leftovers. But the Israelites had the same thing for 40 years. Wow. Well, even though that was very repetitive, there was still reason to be thankful. First of all, the fact that they had food in the wilderness was a reason to be thankful. Some of us, we haven't worked in a year, we haven't worked in 6 months or whatever, and yet there's still food on the table. So even though it might be beans or even though it might be the same thing, that's still a reason to be thankful. And another thing that was great about that wilderness experience that should just kind of make praise stir up in us is the fact that it was a miracle. Manna, which is what they ate in the wilderness, is a type of bread. And where did it grow? They were moving. So there was no place to plant seed and let it grow. It was coming down out of heaven. And that was a miracle and a reason to give God thanks and a reason to give God praise. I remember when my son got hurt. I told you about him if you watched any previous videos. And in the first year when it happened, I wouldn't leave him. I just didn't feel comfortable. My husband and I had a trip planned, and we were going, I think, like to the Bahamas or somewhere out of the country. And it came down to getting close, and I wouldn't go. I just didn't feel comfortable. There wasn't anyone to leave my son with. And then, so we did cancel that trip, and praise God, they didn't really penalize us. We were able to get our money back. But later, God allowed a husband and wife couple to move next door to us. And this couple, they're nurses. And they are some of the nicest people you ever want to meet. And particularly the husband, now my husband and I can go on trips and we can go away, and the husband will take care of my son or help to look out for him, and he does it at no charge. Now, of course, I don't just not give him anything, because that would be taking advantage, and I want to show my thankfulness. And so, I offer him something, but I just want to say the miracle of that. Now, we haven't gotten to our promised land. And in this case, the promised land is my son healed and up out of the wheelchair. But this is still a notable miracle that God would put people near us who will care for him and enable my husband and I to get rest sometimes, or to go out on an enjoyment, and my son to be cared for. That's a miracle and something still to be thankful for. The last thing I want to talk about as far as the wilderness experience is that we have to be grateful in similar situations, because it is what God provided. And what I mean by that is the wafers or the manna, they were nutritious, they sustained their body, they provided all that the people needed at that time. And if God didn't change it, then that's what they needed. And we should be grateful for what God provides, because he's the perfect provider and he knows exactly what we need. So if we are in situations and circumstances that seem very difficult or they're undesirable, yet God hasn't changed them, then we need to submit to the will of God. Yeshua himself, it says he became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross, or the death of the stake. So in other words, he didn't get saved or rescued from the cross. He had to go through that. And so even if your circumstance is very difficult, and if God hasn't changed it, it's still a place to be thankful, a place to say, well, God, I thank you for whatever you're doing in this situation and this circumstance. And we must be able to do that even when things are challenging. Because if we don't, then we'll never make it to the promised land. The wilderness experience of the Israelites was never meant to be permanent. It turned into a permanent situation because they complained, because they had a lack of faith. So if you don't want your situation to be permanent, we've got to learn to be thankful. God didn't mean your situation to be permanent. There is a promised land. You're single and you don't like it, there is a promised land. There's a spouse for you. But don't forfeit it by complaining in your singleness. Do the best that you can do while you're single. Serve God wholeheartedly and be thankful so that you will get to the promised land. You're having financial struggles? Be thankful. Praise God. Because it's not always going to be like that. God doesn't mean for you to always have struggles. Learn what you need to learn. Grow how you need to grow. Be thankful in the situation so you can move on to the promised land. Move on to the prosperity that God has for you. Get the lesson you need to get in the circumstance you're in so you can move on. Your circumstance is never meant to be permanent. Remember, it only became permanent because the Israelites complained. So let's not forfeit our promised land. Let's be thankful where we are so that we can obtain that promotion, so that our family will be saved, so that whatever or that healing will occur, whatever that promised land we're looking for. Be thankful now so that we can get to that desired goal. God bless you. Of course, we should always be thankful.